Hi, everyone, and welcome to the next installation in the HCD Research webinar series, Smart Research with Smart Speakers, Keeping the Context in Consumer Research. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. This is Allison Gakowski speaking, and I'm the Director of Global Research here at HCD, a consumer research house focusing on the integration of different behavioral and applied neuroscience and psychological tools for the creation of better research. And we're very excited today because we're joined by Dr. John Ennis, the co-founder and president of Aigora. Agora is an artificial intelligence and sensory research agency, and John has been widely recognized as an expert in just that. He's a market research consultant trained in both mathematics and computational neuroscience with over a dozen years experience. John has authored 2 books, more than 30 peer-reviewed articles, and is the host of the popular podcast Agoracast, which consists of interviews with industry experts on how new technologies are transforming sensory and consumer science. And I highly recommend you check it out. You can get it on Apple, Spotify, and a few other places. And with the help of Dr. Michelle Nagella, HCD's VP of Research and Innovation, and a behavioral neuroscience expert in neuropsychology, psychology, and consumer science, we're going to spend the next 45 minutes or so discussing how context is king. The issue is that context often goes overlooked when examining research results. However, it plays a major role in consumer behavior and decision-making. In the moment, contextual research examines consumer behaviors, choices, and product use that can't be assessed through traditional research surveys or replicated environments. And understanding these naturalistic consumer behaviors and impressions can help in product design and marketing. Adding smart speaker technology to research allows for hands-free consumer responses while using products in their own home or in context. We'll discuss why context is so important in the consumer decision-making process and how in-the-moment research can contribute insights that reflect real-time drivers, thoughts, and behaviors. Now, one more thing before I toss it over to Michelle. Please take advantage of the Q&A feature on the Zoom platform. You should see a toggle there at the bottom. And feel free to ask questions throughout the presentation at any time, and we'll aim to answer them either after the discussion or potentially during. And with that, Michelle, I'm going to toss it over to you.
Great. Just to talk about who we are, as Allison was saying, we use a combination of tools at HCD and always looking for new technologies to add into getting better insights in consumer research. With my role being VP of Innovation and Research, I'm always looking for ways to integrate traditional tools with tools from neuroscience or psychology, or maybe some tools from technology. For example, working with John to learn a little bit more about things that we can add. And here we have Agora. And John, do you want to talk a little bit about what your company does?
Sure. So thanks, Michelle, and thank you everyone at HCD for having me out today. It's really great to be here. And of course, thank you to all the attendees who've shown up. So Aigora is a market research consulting company that helps consumer science teams prepare for artificial intelligence. And in practice, that really means 4 things, in addition to we do an education and assessment piece, but in terms of the actual activities of our work, either we're usually engaged in automating processes. So this would be creating scripts or workflows or dashboards to automate the production or the analysis and of data and the production of tables, charts, this kind of thing, kind of fully formatted outputs in Word or Excel or PowerPoint, usually in some interactive way, because in our field, no 2 studies are ever really exactly the same, and so usually you need some element of human input. So we create a kind of human in the loop automated processes that allow you to create your tables and charts formatted as you need in your company branding. We also work with companies on knowledge management. Of course, this is a huge area where data is only as useful as it is accessible. And so we are fans of graph databases. We help our clients to get their data organized into graph databases so that you can run simulated experiments, or you can easily access historical data. Maybe you can run machine learning on data across multiple studies, that kind of thing. That leads to the next piece, which is the kind of advanced analytics. So we, of course, do a lot of machine learning. We're actually now getting into computer vision, which is quite interesting. And other just standard statistical analyses, Bayesian statistics, network analysis, that kind of thing. And then the last piece, the last way that we use AI within sensory and consumer science is using technology to collect data in new ways. And there are a bunch of areas here that I think are really interesting. I actually mentioned computer vision. I think that's also can be a new source of information depending on how you use it. We're interested in virtual reality, augmented reality. But today we're going to be talking about another really exciting development, which is the use of smart speakers for data collection. Smart speakers are actually very serious pieces of technology, both hardware and software coming together. And as sensory and consumer scientists, we should be asking ourselves how we can leverage this technology to advance our research. So that's kind of big picture. And now, Michelle, you're going to present the next few slides. Is that correct?
Yeah. So, from our standpoint, we're always looking at consumer research as looking how consumers make decisions and interact with products in the world, or maybe interact with stores or behaviors, whatever it might be. But ultimately, humans are creatures of habit. So everything that we do, from our taxes to our exercise, cleaning the house, our wake-up routine, all of those sort of things are habits. And so really understanding how we form these habits that really ultimately shape our lifestyle is really important to helping us understand better, consumers and how they're making their choices on the different products, or maybe even how they're using our products. So when we look at a behavioral approach to doing consumer research, we're really thinking about behavioral economics in combination with neuroscience and psychology to really get at what those drivers are behind someone's behavior. So when we look at the habit loop, or the sort of elements that go into forming our habit, you have your actual routine, which is the habit, and then you have the cue, which is sort of the trigger to get you to do your routine, get you to do the habit at all. And then you also have the reward, which encourages you to do the action again. It's the reason that you want to do that habit, whether it's something bad like having, a nightly ice cream, not necessarily bad, but considered like a sinful habit, or something good like studying, right? So the cue is that you have your books there. The routine is that you're reading your books, you're memorizing the words, and reward is that you get better grades. So the behavioral approach to that is really being able to take apart the pieces of the habit to better understand those cues, routines, and rewards, and what sort of drives each one of those behaviors. When you better understand these cues, routines, and rewards, and all of these things that sort of feed into our decision making and the behaviors we do with the products around us, then you can start to identify key features of your own products or brands, identify things that maybe need to be improved, or key opportunities for innovation. You can find ways to disrupt those behaviors to maybe introduce a new habit or introduce a new product into a current habit. And that really provides for all sorts of innovation opportunities. So that's sort of the behavioral approach to thinking about consumer science, and adding this sort of behavioral economic approach to that. Now, when we think about context, as Allison was saying earlier, it can be a really tricky thing to play around with. And for those of you that have been to any of the conferences in the past couple of years that have to do around consumer behavior, context really is key, right? Because it can really influence the way you interpret any product that you encounter. So the question has really been like, what are we looking at when we have someone come into a CLT and say, do an evaluation? Is it correct? Is it incorrect? If you go to all the conferences and you read all the papers, you would find that they actually, all the different approaches to context and really thinking about where somebody is evaluating a product, they're all important. So if you think about the CLT situation, you get very good discrimination. If you think about home use tests, where say, the difference between someone trying a Corona at home at a barbecue versus, in a laboratory setting, or maybe in a focus group type of setting, their answers might vary, right? So you're going to get more discrimination if you were in the CLT situation than if you were in a noisy situation like a backyard barbecue. But one thing we really want to focus on now is that people have been really focused on the product itself. So maybe about the key attributes about the product, the sensory properties, the colors, the look, the messaging, all those sort of things, with kind of removing the consumer from the equation. So the question can really be, have we been really looking at context and research correctly? When we're looking at sterile environments, we're not really getting at what those behaviors are naturalistically. So what about the consumer? What's really driving their behaviors? And that gets back to the importance we see in taking that behavioral approach to research to understand those drivers. And when we think about how we go about setting context in consumer research, there's a lot of different ways that you can use. There's evoking context or there's creating context. So evoking context might be giving the suggestion to the consumer that, close your eyes, imagine you're in a grocery store. What sort of things do you choose? Where do you go first? Setting sort of a scene for them and then have them run through a set of survey questions. But you can also create context. So some of those technology approaches to really creating a context in order to be able to measure people might include things like augmented reality, where someone might use glasses like Google Glasses, for example, that will impose imagery in their visual scape, except they can also see what's actually around them, which is different from virtual reality, where you completely block them off from anything that is around them and they only see what you're exposing them to. Immersive rooms, on the other hand, the person is completely free, but the room itself maybe has projected imagery or certain temperatures or certain furniture and other things within the room to create a setting. Maybe you've made a bar setting, or maybe you've made a bathroom setting to sort of create this room that has a particular environment. What we're going to focus on today is a really interesting idea that can improve the home use test sort of situation, because in these other things that we've sort of talked about, they often would be done, in a CLT situation, a central location test, except maybe the augmented reality, where you might be able to have someone use something on their phone. You can imagine where someone, if you've ever played Pokemon Go, or if you've tried out furniture that you can actually project into the room. But smart speakers gives us an opportunity to have people go through an activity in their own setting where they would typically make these decisions and be able to ask them about it, really dig a little deeper into it. So now we're going to kind of talk about this approach and how it works. John's going to start introducing more of that.
Okay, great. Thank you very much, Michelle. All right, so let me go ahead and share my screen. So here we go. Yeah, so what we're going to talk about with smart speakers is that really a smart speaker is a tremendous piece of technology. So I have here on my, if you can see me in the speaker view, this is Amazon Alexa Dot, or Echo Dot, I'm sorry, Alexa cancel. So this is an Echo Dot that is attached to a battery. And the thing is that I am sure that this piece of equipment costs more to make than Amazon charges for it, because they're trying to push these pieces of equipment out into the world for the sake of people shopping on Amazon. So they have invested a lot into this piece of technology. There are multiple microphones in here. There are many neural networks involved in processing the sounds that come in, this kind of speech to text. And there's a really nice platform behind the scenes for creating skills. And what Agora has done is we've created our own platform. I can show you just a little bit, as we get into this, for being able to create surveys customized for sensory and consumer science using these devices for data collection. And I think that this is an extremely, it's really amazing piece of technology, and it's something that's just going to become more and more widespread. You're going to see these kinds of smart speakers integrated into wearables. You're going to have smart speakers, in glasses, and you're going to have smart speakers in people's cars or on even their clothing, on their watch, whatever. So we're going to more and more be able to ask people questions in the moment, hands-free, in the natural environment, in context, like Michelle has been saying. So what we're going to do is kind of go through an overview of some ideas of when smart speakers will be useful. So smart speaker surveys provide the ability to collect data in the moment, in context, hands-free, and in-home, okay? And they also have applications outside of the home. They can be used in central locations or with sensory panels. We can talk about that if we have time at the end. But the thing that I think we're, want to make sure that we get across today is that we're really excited to have this partnership with HCD Research, and we also have a kind of companion partnership with P&K Research for fielding these studies, where we're working together to be able to provide you the ability to conduct these kinds of surveys yourself. So here is a demo. So we're going to start with a recorded demo. This is an early demo of maybe from about 6 months ago, 7 months ago, when we were first getting into this, where this is when we first started to see the potential of smart speaker surveys. So let me share my computer sound. And this demo is from before. So if any of you attended the SSP Spring webinar series, Janavi Kumar from General Mills shared the results of pilot research that we conducted in collaboration with General Mills. General Mills sponsored to look at the comparison between surveys conducted on smart speakers and surveys conducted in more traditional environments, like on the phone or on tablets or on the computer. And so we can talk about the results of that research at the end of this webinar. But what you're going to hear now is really a survey that's similar to what you would see on your phone. I'm going to do a demo after this that kind of reflects some of the learnings that we've made over the last several months working on these kinds of surveys. But this will give you an idea of, like, this is me in my shower answering questions on an Echo Dot. Okay, so here we go. I'm going to go ahead and play it. It's just a little snippet of the survey. Okay.
Please get the shampoo bottle labeled 200 and say begin when you're ready to begin.
Begin.
Please place a small amount of shampoo in your hand. Say continue when you're ready to answer questions.
Continue.
On a 5-point scale, with 1 being very difficult and 5 being very easy, how easy or difficult was it to squeeze the shampoo from the bottle? 1 to 5 possible.
5.
Looking at this shampoo, based on its appearance, how much do you like or dislike it? Please use a 9-point scale, with 1 being dislike extremely and 9 being like extremely. 1 to 9 possible.
Repeat.
Looking at this shampoo, based on its appearance, how much do you like or dislike it? Please use a 9-point scale, with 1 being dislike extremely and 9 being like extremely. 1 to 9 possible.
3.
Now consider the thickness of this shampoo. On a 5-point scale, with 1 being not thick enough, 3 being just about right, and 5 being much too thick, what would you say about the thickness of this shampoo? 1 to 5 possible.
1.
Now please lather the shampoo before answering the next few questions. Say continue when you're ready to answer questions.
Continue. Okay, so let me stop sharing my computer sound. Okay, so that was an example, and the survey goes on. But the thing that's really remarkable about that is that this Echo Dot is able to pick up those responses and transcribe them accurately, even with the shower sound in the background. So hopefully you start to see that a whole new kind of horizon of research is opening up with this technology. Okay, so now I'm going to do a live demo where I'm going to actually evaluate I've got some hand sanitizer here. And I'm going to show, as the results come in, once the results start to come in, I'm going to switch over and you'll be able to see the results coming in real time into the platform. So everything's time-stamped. It's really quite amazing that this works so well. Okay, so here we go. All right, Alexa, open hand sanitizer survey demo. Alexa, open hand sanitizer survey demo.
Thank you for participating in our survey. This survey will take about 10 minutes. Your answers are very important to us, so please listen carefully to the instructions and be sure to speak loudly and clearly. Throughout this survey, if you would like to repeat a question, please say, repeat. Do you consent to recordings being made of your responses to this survey and to these recordings being used for research purposes?
Yes.
Please get your hand sanitizer and say begin when you're ready to begin.
Begin.
Please determine what brand of hand sanitizer you have. What is the brand of your hand sanitizer? Please begin your answer by saying the brand is.
The brand is Dr. Bronner's.
Now please apply your hand sanitizer, using as you normally would, and say continue when you're ready to answer questions.
Continue.
Was it easy or hard to apply the sanitizer?
Easy.
Could you smell the sanitizer quickly?
Yes.
Does it smell good?
Yes.
Is the fragrance too weak, too strong, or just about right?
Just about right.
Please think about the sanitizer's fragrance. How would you describe the fragrance? Begin your answer by saying the fragrance is.
The fragrance is lavender.
Do you like this sanitizer?
Yes.
Do you like it a lot?
Yes.
Do you like anything in particular about this sanitizer?
Yes.
What do you like about this sanitizer? Begin your answer by saying I like.
I like its fresh scent.
Anything else?
No.
Do you dislike anything in particular about this sanitizer?
Yes.
What don't you like about this sanitizer? Begin your answer by saying I don't like.
I don't like how small the bottle is.
Anything else?
No.
Okay, we're almost done evaluating this sanitizer. For the next 2 rounds of questions, I'm going to read statements that you might or might not agree with. In each case, please say yes if you agree the statement applies and no if you don't agree. When you're ready, please say continue.
Continue.
This sanitizer is sticky.
No.
This sanitizer dries quickly.
Yes.
This sanitizer stings my hands.
No.
This sanitizer cools my skin.
Yes.
This sanitizer smells good.
Yes.
This sanitizer stings my eyes.
No.
This sanitizer is refreshing.
Yes.
This sanitizer warms my skin.
No.
Here is the last set of statements with which you might or might not agree. Remember, the possible answers are yes or no. Please say continue to continue.
Continue.
This sanitizer is convenient.
Yes.
I recommend this sanitizer.
Yes.
This sanitizer is easy to use.
Yes.
This sanitizer is effective.
Yes.
That's it. Thank you very much for completing our survey. Say stop to end the survey.
Stop.
Survey ended successfully. Have a good day.
Okay, so that's it. I mean, honestly, I find it to be amazing that this works, and it really works very well. We've had other demos where you're using the product, or actually real life examples too, where it is amazing how quickly you get used to using this technology. You're in your kitchen eating a bar or whatever, and it's just totally amazing that it works so well. So I would say that this is something we definitely need to capitalize on. The possibilities are really endless, and what we'd like to do now is go to an interactive poll, where now that you've been working on this or thinking about this, and we've got a few answers in here already from some of the staff here at HCD. So if you can think for a minute about having heard this technology in action, what are some applications of smart speaker surveys that you would find exciting? So if you could go to menti.com and use this code 516464, you can go ahead, and it'll be really interesting to kind of read what people find to be exciting as far as, when they start to think about hands-free, in the moment product evaluations, or really, I mean, it could be anything. What are some things that you find to be most interesting? Okay,
I think while everybody's sort of entering those in, and please do go to this website to answer this live survey so we can have this be part of our discussion, let's discuss some of those other possibilities, right? So John, if you want to go back to the slides.
Yeah, so, okay, so this is up and running, so we'll revisit this in a minute. And now Michelle is going to talk about some of the other options. So here we go.
Yeah, so, the survey that we were giving in the demo there, the live demo, was very sensory oriented. And I was talking in the beginning about those behaviorally driven ideas about how we make decisions. So you can imagine, like, if the participant were maybe trying to decide what drink to have with dinner, or what snack to have, or maybe, they're going to make dinner and they go to the refrigerator, they can't decide. What is, to explore further those ideas of cues, routine, and rewards, you could utilize something like a smart speaker that could be in the moment, in their own home, while this thing is naturally occurring that they're making these decisions. They can go ahead and start the survey and sort of answer those questions, or perhaps talk through that experience of making those decisions. So you can see how that really fits in pretty well if you were making these types of decisions, about what food or drink to have. So that's one example you could have. And going to the next slide, we can talk about another sort of area to consider. John, if you want to go to the next slide. More that hands-free idea. So activities where the person could not use their hands to answer a survey, because of course, when you think about the in-home use surveys that are done currently, they often are done, on a computer or on a cell phone. But that has to be done separately from the act. So they have to go and wash their dishes, or wash their hair, or wash their hands, or make the meal, or whatever it is that they might be doing. But you could ask in the moment, hands-free, while the person is, say, washing the dishes. So any sort of activity that you want to find out more about, for example, even, as you saw in the demo, you can get those timestamps as well. So you might even be able to get like behavioral data around how often they do it, what time they do it, all these things that you might be looking for in your typical home use research. And going a little bit further and diving into even more ideas that you could use this for on the next slide, maybe around things that people are a little less comfortable talking about, right? That, a lot of times when we look at these context situations where, someone needs to be using something at home, sometimes you might have a qualitative situation where you'll have live interviews that are, done online, where, the person could answer questions about a product. But maybe it would be easier to sort of remove the person from it. So if you had questions around, hygiene or feminine care, or, anything that's done in the bathroom or the bedroom, things are a lot more private. This is another way that you could get at sort of those behavioral data. So I know, like, back in a previous life, we did a lot of work in feminine care, and it was really difficult to sort of run that sort of research to get an idea of what people thought of the products, because they had to leave the interview situation and go try on the product and then come back and report on it. So instead of having something like that, you could actually have someone in the moment sort of discussing maybe the struggles that they had, or the things they liked or didn't like. So you can really collect a lot of interesting and really valuable data here that can certainly inform your research, beyond what you do currently, that you can't do when someone's hands are maybe occupied, or, really in the live situation. So moving on to sort of get at those questions that you've probably already got ideas on, let's go ahead and open it up. So we're going to take some questions now, and also you can also email us separately if you have any questions, and we're happy to answer any of those. But let's maybe address some of the ideas that came up on the live survey, as well as some of the live questions that have come in.
And Michelle, I'm going to go ahead and put this link back up in case anybody didn't get a chance to see it. So what we're doing in addition, you could also put your questions in here if you wanted, but although there is the Q&A panel, that would be a better place for questions. If you go to menti.com and use this code, you can put your ideas for smart speakers into here, and then we have actually the question and answer panel that we can use for questions. So
yeah, I think sexual health is a really interesting one. Again, it's that situation where people maybe don't really want to talk about something, or, you know, again, if you want to have somebody use something or try something on, that's really difficult to do in a CLT, right? You know, and then in the home research, having them do a survey, you know, away from the experience, you know, this could be a really interesting approach. I think cosmetics is a good one too.
Hey, Michelle, how would you like to handle the question and answer? Do you want to go through and talk about, you can comment on this for a little while, and then we'll have, is Allison going to moderate the questions, or how would you like
I
to
believe
handle it?
Allison's going to introduce some of the questions, and we can just have these scrolling in the background.
Okay,
Yeah, let me
great.
jump in with a couple questions. So John, a couple questions for you. Why did you choose Amazon over something like Google? And then the idea of data privacy, anonymity, just a little bit more on that.
Right. Well, first off, I mean, the long-term vision of this is to be able to distribute it on all platforms, on all the smart speaker survey platforms. It just happens that, so right now, the current smart speaker penetration in the United States is about 40%. About 40% of homes, so that was the 2019 number I saw, have smart speakers. And of the, you know, within those 40%, well, 30% of homes have Amazon Alexa devices. So in terms of where do you start when you're building out a platform, it makes sense to start with the thing that has the greatest penetration. So that's the reason. Although in the long run, our idea with the platform is that you build your survey and you would press a button, it would deploy to all the major platforms, similar to how when you post a podcast, there are services that will send the podcast out to all the various platforms. So that's the answer to that question. And then there was a question about anonymity. Is that right, Allison?
Yes. Yep. And data privacy.
Yeah, data privacy. Okay, so first off, these are people who are going to be paneled. These are not just people in the wild, and this is why we have the partnership also with P&K Research. What P&K is doing is they are building out a panel of, like an Alexa panel within their larger panel. So they have, you know, thousands of people nationwide that are in their, you know, in their database that come in to central location tests, or with whom they do home use tests. And what they're doing is recruiting as they would normally. But if someone doesn't have an Amazon Alexa device, they're going to be given a dot for that study as an incentive. And then they'll be enrolled in the Alexa panel, which is getting built out. So there's a couple things. Alexa cancel. I'm going to turn off my device here. One thing is that the people are panelists in the study. So this is not just you know, wild surveys in the wild. These are still designed surveys. And the other thing I would say about that is that by building out the panel in this kind of intentional way, you deal with the problem that there's this obvious bias. If you only do the research with people who have Alexa devices, then of course it's really confounded. I mean, your data is totally biased by the fact that this is just a subset of the population. But if you recruit like you would normally and enroll people in your panel and give them a dot if they don't have one, provide some training on how to use it. Of course, there's still a question, and we have some research underway looking into this, about whether or not someone's familiarity with the device makes a big difference. These devices are very easy to use. I mean, my 4-year-old son has done surveys on these devices, so I don't actually think there's a big barrier to entry there. But what's neat about this is at the intersection of a designed experiment and observational research, that it's, I think it's kind of the best of both worlds. So the anonymity is not, I would say, a concern, because these are panelists who know they're enrolled in a survey, and if anything, they'd like to get credit for it, right? So hopefully that answers that question.
Yeah, great. And when we think about that side of things, you know, any type of adverse event that may happen during product use, how do we control for that?
I think we would do that very similar to how we do for other studies, right? So the same way you would do for any iHut, you know, you have your protocol for reporting. You, of course, any actives, if you were sending stuff to people, all the same things that you would do for any of your other consumer studies, particularly iHut, then you would want that to apply here as well.
I agree. It's the same. Yeah.
And I love this question because this is something that I know have been discussing internally a lot. The question is, I noticed on the live survey, your responses were yes or no, not scaled. Do you find that it is better for this type of survey?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would say this gets back to the research that was conducted in collaboration with General Mills, that when you take a survey that a survey that's only verbal and there are numeric answers, there's something that just feels like you're a little bit lost at sea. Like, what does a 7 mean? When there must be some interaction. Michelle, maybe you can speak about this as a neuroscientist. Interaction between some sort of abstract reasoning and the visual system. Because when you're looking at a piece of paper and you can see 7 boxes, 6 makes sense. But when you're doing it without anything to look at, you definitely feels unnatural. And so what we found is that word responses, verbal responses, feel much more comfortable when you're doing one of these surveys. So it doesn't have to be yes, no. I mean, you'll notice that we did with do you like it? Yes, no. Do you like it a lot, a little? That's a derived 4-point scale. We could have
dig a little further sort of thing.
Yeah, you could do a derived 6-point scale if you wanted. You could say, do you like it, dislike it, or do you feel neutral? And then if they like it, you follow up with say, well, do you like it a lot? Do you like it somewhat? Or do you like it just a little? I mean, you can manipulate the words, but I think the theme there is that we want to use words, not numbers. It's just, and Michelle, do you have anything to add on that?
No, I totally agree. I think it, when the questions get longer, which is what happens a lot if you start adding in scales, people's attention is not fully there. So they may not really be able to totally grasp the numbers that they need to report on, or, it's so far removed at that point from the actual question that they're sort of disjointed. So it's better to ask it as concisely as possible, I think. So it's not just about the scale itself, but also just the conciseness of the question.
Right. Yeah, because you would notice that with only a few exceptions, did we even tell people what the possible answers are? Before we went into that big battery of yes, no, we explained. But like, do you like it? We didn't say the choices are yes or no. We just said, do you like it? And then it's very natural to answer yes or no.
I think this is a really good place to also bring up that this shouldn't be a total replacement of a consumer survey that you would do.
Yes.
We kind of see this as a supplement. So being able to get the in-the-moment responses. So the questions that are most important for that in-the-moment experience, and then following up with an actual, more in-depth scaled consumer survey that you would typically do, I think really is the best approach to this. None of the approaches that we introduce from consumer neuroscience should be replacements. For example, asking any of your traditional survey questions, because some of those are best done in a traditional survey, but there are things that you simply can't ask in a survey. So that's what really this is for. It's for being able to get that better insight, get that more naturalistic experience that you're looking for.
Totally agree.
Great. And thinking about the process of creating this, what does that look like? What does that length of development and deployment look like?
Yeah. Well, what I would say is we have built a platform that manages a lot of those details. If you were to just try to create a survey as a one-off Alexa skill, it would be, if you were going to actually have it be kind of production quality, that would be a lot of work. However, what we've done since we have gained experience in this area is we've kind of abstracted that work out into our platform. And so we have Agora has a platform whereby we can create surveys for our partners. So for example, when somebody comes to HCD and they want a smart speaker survey done, then we can work with HCD to build out that survey using our platform. But without the platform, it really is not very fun, because invariably what happens is that you have to, there's always going to be changes. Anyone that's working on a survey knows that the first draft is almost never going to be the thing that you end up going live with. And over the course of all these iterations, if you are having to go back into the code, and there's multiple programming languages involved in deploying one of these surveys, it becomes a nightmare. So that's why we built our platform, so we can do it pretty efficiently. But I would say it's fairly, doing it by hand is fairly complicated.
And other countries outside of the US, what is that representation of smart speakers? Do we think that we can successfully do an ex-US study?
Yeah. Well, I would say that we do have there is a market research company in Australia that we are talking with about becoming a kind of a partner. Our kind of vision is to have this global partnership where we would have kind of Agora smart speaker partners around the world. We have another company in the UK we're talking with about kind of joining this network, so that if, you know, when someone comes to HCD and wants a global study, HCD would have partners that could deploy the surveys in different countries, you know, so the same survey would be deployed. It is true that the penetration of the Amazon devices is lower in other countries, and it depends on the country. So, and of course, you also have to think about internet connectivity, that kind of thing. There, depending on which countries you want to go to. If you're talking about Australia, then I think it's going to be more or less the same as the United States or Canada, countries in Europe. But if you're going to, you know, depending on where you're going, it may be the case that more people need to be actually given the device in order to do the study, versus being able to rely on a kind of natural penetration of the devices. Okay. Oh,
I think
okay.
as far as like thinking about how this sort of network works, you know, Agora and John are really the ones putting together this capability, and we're sort of designing the overall study. And as far as, you know, the U.S. consumer products go, P&K is really developing that panel that would have all the people that we're looking for to participate. Just to explain that a little bit better.
Right, and to further just go into, if we were to do an actual project, really we're looking at typical project timelines. Using this type of technology is not going to extend that timeline in any way. So
right.
From that perspective, it's really very standard.
And Allison,
we,
I got a, if I
go
can,
ahead.
I got a note that I didn't quite answer one of those questions correctly. That someone said they were talking about deploying the survey. They were saying, you know, how complicated is it? Yeah, I would say, just like you just said, Allison, that if someone has a survey where there's going to be some online component, maybe there's a behavioral component, the kind of the other pieces that might be in place with one of your more standard surveys, we can add this smart speaker component and stay on the same timeline because the platform allows us to deploy the surveys very quickly.
Mm-hmm. But you can imagine how this adds a whole dimension to that in-home research where you would have just been doing, say, a daily survey. Now, every time the person does the activity, they can say, Alexa, start survey.
Right.
You know, so every time they go to the shower, every time they go to use the hand sanitizer, or make that decision about a drink, whatever it might be, change the baby's diaper, right?
Yeah.
All of those things can be logged, not just in answering the in-the-moment questions, but also when they happen, how often they happen, what's the time frame in between. So you're getting all that data, that behavioral data that you know, we're most interested in as well.
Mm-hmm.
And can we integrate something like implicit testing or any other psychological tools into this smart speaker research?
Certainly, you can do psychological testing within the research. I think that there are some really good applications for that. We're testing those. We're working on those ideas currently. Things like implicit are a little bit more complicated because they do require the timed responses, but all these things can be looked at. You know, there's other sort of psychological tests that can also be used. We just want to stay within the you know, the confines of what's really possible for the participant as well. You know, again, thinking about those scales where you really want the questions to be concise and easy to go through without, you know, sort of losing people in the moment.
And video responses, would those be able to be captured?
Yeah, so there's a couple of ways I would say that, and Michelle, I think maybe you could, you know, add on to this as well. For one thing, you could have a situation where someone captures a video on their phone while they do the survey on the device. So that would be one way. Now, it is true that some of the Echo devices, like the Echo Show, have a camera. And it is possible to, I mean, we're actually looking into this. None of our surveys right now currently incorporate pictures, but in principle, it could be the case that before someone uses a product, or maybe you've got some sort of cooking survey and you want people to hold up a picture of the utensil they're about to use to stir the pot or whatever, you could potentially take a picture. And actually, when Rob Baker from P&G was on AgoraCast, he talked about how they were using some of the camera capabilities of the Echo, I believe it was the Echo, some of the in-home, like, you know, kind of smart devices to allow people to take pictures in context. So I think definitely there's a natural affinity between the video and picture side of some of these devices and the surveys, you know. But I would say right now it's not something that's integrated, but it's definitely possible. Michelle,
Yeah, and even if you didn't have the device itself, you could also have the app on your phone. So there could be some sort of integration there as well.
Right.
You know, and also considering that, you know, some of these implicit tools can be used on your phone to make it pretty easy. Now, another aspect about the Alexa surveys, if we want to think about the behavioral sort of approach again, is that, you know, it doesn't have to be just surveys. You could have reminders for people to do certain activities. You know, Alexa itself or any of the smart speakers do have reminders for people to do things like take their medications or whatever it might be. So you can imagine how these sort of things could be sort of added as well. So you could have timed surveys that happen at particular times of day, or reminding people to use the products you've sent them home with, whatever it might be.
Yeah, we're actually working on a diary capability, food diary, where you would say, you know, Alexa, record that I ate a banana or whatever. And then there will be triggers where if you've eaten certain things, then that would say, do you mind if I ask you a few questions about that? And then there will be a little survey that happens as a function of, you know, so you have a combined food diary and survey capability. So we're working on that. Yeah, be nice to partner with HCD to bring you that as well. Okay.
And does this have to be used with product?
No. You know, so we've talked a little bit about this. You know, definitely what we focused on here is product because it's probably the easiest thing to really talk about and think about. But like I said, it could be anything that goes on at home or anywhere that you would take your phone. So habits that you're looking to explore further, you know, so let's say you're doing exploratory research to understand better something, to make some sort of innovation for your brand or your product. That's something that you could just look at people's habits. You know, maybe there's something involved with media. So how you're making your decisions on choosing something on Netflix. I know that's a constant struggle in our house, is trying to decide what to watch on Netflix, you know, between the toddler and my husband and myself. You know, so how are people making these decisions? That's perhaps something that can be explored, you know, responses that they're having to TV shows or commercials after they happen. You know, maybe even something around print ads, anything, packaging, home appliances, really anything that you can think of that people interact with that you wouldn't necessarily want to measure in a stereo environment, but really want to get that hands-free in the moment, in context measure of, we can really approach.
Yeah, I agree. Can I see there's a question here, Allison, about the data, whether or not, can I answer that question? Did you want to?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so there's a question here about, does Amazon gain access to the data? Okay, yeah, and obviously this is a sensitive topic given, this is certainly a sensitive topic. Amazon claims that what happens is, as soon as the data are transcribed, that a small percentage of the data out of context are taken for the purpose of updating their algorithm. So it might be the case, for example, that my answer, yes, is then like that bit of sound, that little sound, you know, sound snippet of me saying yes, and then the transcribed answer, yes, is sent off for humans I believe it's humans, to listen to it and see, did the algorithm get correctly transcribe the data. So they do keep a tiny fraction of the data out of context for the purpose of improving their machine learning algorithm. Other than that, what they state is that they destroy it. Now, I mean, I don't work inside Amazon, so I don't know the details of what actually happens, but the story, their policy is that it is destroyed. So that would be something to look into, that if you, I mean, yeah, I have a friend who's fairly high up, John Smythe actually was on Agora cast, and he said that Amazon is actually very, very careful about making sure they destroy data properly, because they understand that this is a make or break kind of business reputation question for them, because they do so many data services that it isn't worth it to them to end up with any kind of suspicion that they're misusing data. So from what he's told me and from the official policy, they destroy the data immediately. But however, that is a conversation that I would say it would be important to have if we're talking about very sensitive information, that obviously we want to be careful with our data. So in principle, it's destroyed.
Mm-hmm.
John, what do you think about using this for descriptive panels?
Yeah, I think it's really interesting. I think the one thing you have to be aware of, and Michelle, if you have comments to add to this as well, the one thing you have to be aware of with these surveys is that they take longer to administer. And if you have a panel that is going to come in and is going to quickly, is well trained, and it's going to give you answers very quickly to, on a battery of questions that are used to, like 20 questions, you could be talking about something that takes much, much longer. So I would say it could be good to combine, to integrate into your descriptive research, but I would save it for the questions where you really want the hands-free in the moment. Like
I think
juiciness
then it is
or
that
something.
integration, and it's
Yeah.
Using this for the questions that it's going to be most useful for, right?
Right.
The things that you wouldn't be able to get from after the fact survey, that you really need to get in the moment. And then when you do design those questions, you have to keep in mind what the capabilities are of the person. Again, if it's a descriptive panel, they've been trained so well, they know their scales. So you can probably just say the word, smoky, and they'd be able to say, you don't even have to tell them the scale. They know that it's a 15-point scale, and they would automatically say it's a 4. So maybe there's something that can be done with that. But yeah, as John was saying, I think that it would have to be some sort of integration with an additional type of survey.
Yeah. So maybe your panelists are in there, they've got headphones on, maybe you have 4 devices throughout, the room. And when they first say, take a bite of the juicy chicken, you want to know how juicy it is in that moment. And their hands, or maybe barbecue sauce, their hands are covered in barbecue sauce. And so they're not going to be able to, in that you want to get that that in the moment response, then I think it would be useful. But you should be judicious. This is not a replacement.
Yeah, absolutely.
No. Okay. So Allison,
Yeah.
I see one more question I would like to just respond as far as the partnerships. So I would say that if you are on this call and you want to do a smart speaker survey, that you should contact HCD and have them, they're going to, like Aigora doesn't manage projects. We provide technology, we do consulting services, we build dashboards, that kind of thing, but we don't manage projects. So if you have if you're listening to this webinar and you would like to do a smart speaker survey or integrate one into some other research, I would say contact HCD, and they will then involve us and P&K, as appropriate for the research.
Yeah, we would get everything set up for you. We would, manage that research. We would help you develop the survey and develop, what's most appropriate and which should go in which direction, like what to keep in a traditional survey and what to maybe further explore for the in-the-moment research, to sort of flesh all that out.
Yeah. And if you want me involved as in a consulting role, I'm happy to be involved. But then, if you just want the technology, we can provide that too.
And John, if you can just pull up your and Michelle's contact info again.
That last slide,
Yeah.
Okay.
And I think with that, Michelle and John, do you have any further comments, thoughts?
I think it's super fun and exciting. I think, we're always looking to apply the latest technology. And if you've been to any of the conferences lately, you've seen how everybody's super interested in context research, whatever that means to them, because it means a lot of different things. And I do think that this tool provides a really interesting and exciting way to explore it, context research.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I would build on that by saying that a lot of these technologies work together. If you're interested in, if you've done work with virtual reality or even augmented reality, but especially virtual reality, you know that a question is, how do you collect the responses? Because it's awkward for someone to give responses when they've got goggles on. But now with smart speakers, you solve that problem because you don't need to use their hands anymore.
Yeah.
So
I would go a step further saying that VR work is very difficult because the person can't see the world around them. So they can't feed themselves that burger. They can't take a sip of a drink. Someone has to give it to them via straw, and that's awkward.
Yeah, that's right. And I, along these lines, something I'm interested in, that we're interested in, and we're actually would also be fun to partner with HCD on, is doing in-home VR, because there are these lightweight VR solutions. And so now you can start to see, maybe we're going to be able to use people's phones. This is Google Cardboard. This is kind of a
super cheap. I got one too.
Yeah. It smells like cardboard. So there's other maybe better solutions. But anyway, in-home VR with the answers on smart speakers, it's really interesting how much can be done now, right, with these kind of lightweight technologies.
Yeah, super cool. Well, thank you, everybody, and hope to hear from you, and have a great day. Thank you, John.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Michelle. Thank you, everyone, for showing up. And this is really fun. I hope we all go on this journey together.
Yeah, great.
Okay.
Thanks, John. Thanks, Michelle.
Okay,
Bye-bye.
thanks, guys. Bye-bye, everybody.
Bye, everybody.